So greetings everyone and welcome back to 365 Days of Prog. Today we're going to be reviewing the album Wüdü by Magma.
Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm an avid progressive rock fan, but I'm a long ways from knowing all the prog albums out there. But this year, I'm gonna give it a try. This is 365 Days of Prog.
So get ready everyone, because this is Wüdü by Magma. This is going to be a fantastic Zool ride for you all. So before we get into the review, here are some of my favorite bits off of this album. This is Magma's 6th studio album and it is called Wüdü and it's in Kobanian, of course, the name. And I know, yeah, it is written as Wüdü, but in Kobanian it's actually pronounced voodoo. So if you haven't watched my latest video about Magma, I reviewed the later album of them known as KA. Now that album was a whole different ride of its own, but if you don't know anything about Magma and what I said over that video, you should know that Magma are performing a style of prog which is known as Zool, which is a style that they invented themselves, and this is what is found on this album. Now the lyrics on here are in the made-up language of Kobanian, as I said, and oddly enough in this album it kind of reminded me of Hungarian for some reason. I don't know why this time it did, but it's a made-up language, but it does have some meaning and they use it in a very repetitive way, mostly as an instrument of vocals and less as a solo of a lead vocalist. And although KA and Wüdü are pretty similar in some ways, they are mostly quite different from one another. Now this album opens up with the title track, also called Wüdü, and it features an African drum beat paired with jazzy piano playing and of course the vocals in Kobanian. Now all of that is a really odd mix of things that works kind of well and it's really groovy in some way, and I love how they use the effect of a callback in here to create this sort of grandiose sort of, you know, social effect, if you might want to call it. So you have the lead vocalist saying something and then you have the backing vocalists repeating it after them, and this is overall a pretty interesting song and quite a popular one with the masses. And most songs that come after this one on this album are quite similar to Wüdü, although I believe a bit superior. They all feature the singing in Kobanian and they feature some sort of repetitiveness on one theme that is built upon throughout the entire song, and most of them also feature some sort of like an ominous sonic feeling, which is done using some keyboards in a very clever way, which really has this somewhat Halloweeny effect, if I might even say, and I think it really does add up well with the entire concept and feel of this album. Now when I reviewed KA before, I had one major criticism about it, and that was that album did not know how to, you know, lay low for a moment, take the chill pill and just wait and not be so bombastic and energetic at all times. Now, I thought that was really hard to listen to because you couldn't really take in what you were listening to. Everything was so wide open, so, you know, cranked up to 11 at all times, which it was just too much for me. And this album really does do the opposite in a great way, and it knows how to, you know, go down, go quiet, go mellow in some parts in order to build back up to the more energetic sections and songs. And I think that was a huge refresher on this album. And what song does this better on this album if not for the closing track, De Futura, which I do believe to mean the future if I'm not mistaken. That track clocks in at almost 18 minutes of runtime, and if it was entirely energetic and bombastic at all times, I would have not been able to listen to it with any sort of fun or excitement. And yeah, this track is my second favorite on here. I didn't choose it as my first, but it is pretty close and I think it's a great one. And yes, I am aware I do have a soft spot for longer tracks. Now this track, besides all of the influences I've mentioned so far on this album, also features some sort of Middle Eastern / Arab influence in it. The guitar on here plays at certain parts really, Arab scales on it, which add this sort of interesting dissonance and idea, and it might even add up to the entire lore that Magma is going with. If I'm not mistaken, KA was talking about something that had to do with a researcher, an archaeologist, which goes to the pyramids, and that might be one of the reasons they chose to add this certain influence inside of it, and in some way it does make it a bit alien and outworldly. No, I am not saying that the Arab countries are out of this world, I'm just saying that that's the vibe that the music on here gives me. And can we all just for a moment, take this one moment of silence for the death of the bass on here, because it was played so freaking hard that I don't see any way in which it didn't just freaking die whilst doing the song. This track features basically 18 minutes of the bass being ripped to shreds by the bass player. It's so amazing, it's so fun. If you're a bass player or a bass enthusiast, this song will just blow you away. You can just listen to it and enjoy what's going on with that instrument, because it is all over the place. It's so bombastic, it's so experimental in some way, and I loved it to bits. So yeah, I kind of like this album, but I think the best thing we can do now is to move on and look at the cover. So the cover for this album is really cool in my idea, and I chose this one specifically because I like the colors on it. I've seen a lot of variations which has it more green in them or has it more bluish, but I think this shade of cyan really looks the best on this cover. And yeah, I love this ancient vibe and mysterious vibe that this cover has. It really makes me want to know more about what's found on here. Like if I saw this at a record store, I would just want to buy it because of what the cover represents. And I think that's really good when a cover knows how to do that and actually hook the listener before they even listen to this album. It just has the right amount of details and information to actually get me interested, but not too much to give more than it has to, and I think this is truly a lesson in a cover done right. Now you should know, but I'm not going to show you, this had a, let's say, placeholder cover before this was released, because this album was basically due to be released before the artist could actually finish this cover, so they made a different one, but I think it's less superior. It's really timely in some way. It wasn't supposed to last, and that's why we're left with this lovely cover over here. So when it comes to the rating of this album, I think this one really receives a really appropriate 8 out of 10. It's a good album, I enjoyed it very much. It's not perfect in any way, but I'm still looking for MDK, which is supposed to be Magma's most superb album. But I guess that is about it, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video today, and stay tuned for tomorrow because we're going to be listening to Krasna Hora by the band Blank Manuscript. But until then, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Bye guys.